Good morning, or depending on when you're listening to this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told I had a voice for radio, so I made a podcast. And you're listening to PTCG Radio, the podcast all about the Pokemon trading card game. As always, we're going to start off with a bit of news, we're going to move on to our main topic, and we're going to finish off with a little bit of forum gossip. Now, it's a bit of a weird time for news at the moment. The new Japanese set has just come out. The new English set is coming out in a couple of weeks. We've just had Nationals, Worlds happening in 3 weeks, so there's not a huge amount, but there are a couple of things which have taken my fancy this week. Firstly, the Ditto card, the one I mentioned from the upcoming Japanese set, which will be hitting us hopefully around February time. I told you it had a very interesting card, whereby you could take any basic and put that onto Ditto, and Ditto was that new Pokemon. And I said at the time that there were a lot of questions which needed to be answered, and it seems that there have been some rulings in Japan that have cleared a few things up about Ditto. Firstly, and this one shouldn't surprise you, it doesn't get around the EX rule. So if you put down a Ditto and use his ability to turn it into an EX, he still gives up 2 prizes when KO'd, and that shouldn't really surprise anyone. However, there is one ruling which makes Ditto kind of interesting. It appears that if you put Ditto down on your first turn, and in your second turn to use his ability to turn it into a basic, you can then immediately evolve it, which means that for particularly donkable basics, Dynamo comes to mind specifically, Ditto could, if you can find a space in your deck, help. Because you can play down to Ditto on turn 1, turn 2, you can immediately go Dynamo Electric, you can take away that turn, we've got that 40 HP Pokemon sitting there, ready to be taken out by a Tornadus or by a Mewtwo with a DCE. And that 70 HP could really come in handy. The other use, of course, is that by having that Ditto in your deck, you could potentially run 4 Pokemon of the same in a deck. 4 Entei, 4 Ditto, you're effectively running 8 Entei. Does make you slightly more donkable, but it also means that you're not going to mulligan as much. Second piece of news which I thought was quite interesting was that now they've released the prizes you're going to be getting for Worlds, and it appears that the people in the top 4 are getting factory sealed full sets of the 4 most recent sets. Now, still no word on exactly what these are, but they sound pretty darn funky. The only thing I would say is if you do get top 4 at Worlds, don't open them, because they're going to be worth so much money eventually.
That sounds awesome.
The other piece of news is that the play points and championship points, if you don't know what they are, I'm going to be going through them this week, they've been released, and I can now tell you who the top play pointers are. These are the people that have attended the most tournaments in the year. Number 1 is Tristan Wagner from the Netherlands with 109. Number 2, Bruce Long from the US with 108. Number 3 was Anna V, also from the Netherlands, on 104. And having met Anna and Tristan, I can assure you they are both lovely people. Stefan Ivanov, my apologies for the pronunciation again, from France, finished on 101, and rounding out the top 5, my good friend Tommy Roberts from the UK, with an even ton, 100 play points. And the final piece of news, as you may have already noticed, my friend Derek is putting in some sound bites to this podcast. It's a little thing I want to try. I want to mix it up a little bit week on week, do things a little bit differently, and hopefully they're things that will amuse and add to the podcast. As always, you can find me on Twitter @TheWassy, or email me at ptcgradio@hotmail.co.uk. If you like the sound bites, don't like them, let me know. Now, our main topic for today is going to be the Pokemon season, how it actually works. What we're going to do is we're going to start off at looking at how the tournament season actually works, what the different tournaments are, and this should be quite good for beginners. But I'm then going to move on, looking at championship points, the thresholds, and how to qualify for Worlds, which hopefully will be good for veterans and mean that this bit has something for everybody. So firstly, we need to look at what championship points and play points actually are. Championship points are what you get for winning tournaments or doing well, and these are used for getting into the World Championships. Play points are things that you get just for turning up to tournaments, just for playing in tournaments, and these are used for getting internationals. You need 10 play points to get internationals. Now, there have been rumours about the top play pointer getting a prize, but we've yet to hear anything definitive on that. As soon as I know, needless to say, it will be in here.
But Ross, what does this all mean?
So the way the tournament works, it starts off in September, the month after Worlds. About 2 weeks, 3 weeks after Worlds, we have what are called Battle Roads. Now these happen in September to October, and these are your introductory level tournaments. They used to be quite small and uncompetitive. Since championship points came in, they have become a bit bigger, a bit more competitive. You get 1 play point for playing in these, and you can earn a maximum of 2 championship points. You get 2 for winning one, 1 for coming second. Now, something I haven't mentioned yet is kicker points. If enough people turn up to certain tournaments, then kicker points come in. So in your average battle road, you'll get 1 point for coming second, 2 points for coming first. But if enough people turn up, you can get points for third or fourth because the kicker comes in. And that means that more people are going to get points because more people have turned up. Kicker points do give points to more people, but they do not give more points to people who come first. Now, after Battle Roads, we have what's called regionals, and these were moved from being once a year to twice a year. The first one that happened this year on November the 12th. We don't know the exact date for next season yet, but they'll be around about the same time. And these are big. You can get a maximum of 10 championship points for winning these, 8 for coming second, 6 for getting top 4, or 5 or 4 for getting top 8. Well, that is quite a lot of points, quite frankly. You can only go to one of these, though. There may be a few regionals happening at the same time, but you can only go to one of these. Cities come in next from November to January, and these are really where you can start building up the points. There is a maximum of 6 championship points. You get 6 for winning, 5 for coming second, or 4 for making top 4. And you get 2 play points for turning up to these. The good news is you can go to essentially as many of these as you like. These will be happening weekend after weekend. And in some places you'll be able to go to marathons. This is basically where you have a city championship every day in a certain area. Now, I think there were 3 of these last year. One of them happened in Florida, and there will literally be Monday, city championship in this location. Tuesday, different city championship in a different location. Now, these obviously aren't for everybody. You've got to have the time off work, but it means that you can literally go to a new one every single day for about a week. It's a place where you can really start grinding in and trying to get these play points and these championship points amassing to get to nationals or worlds. States come up next. They happen around March. Now, these have the same championship points as regionals, so you can get a maximum of 10, but they give you 3 play points rather than 5. Now, these happen over a number of weekends, but there is a lot of overlap, so generally you will only be going to about 3 of these. In April, it was April the 14th this year. Again, next year the date will be slightly different, but about the same. You have regionals, which is exactly like the regionals that happened back in November. Exactly the same, 5 play points, maximum of 10 championship points, and you can again only go to one of these. And the nicer part of the season, if you will, the easier part of the season, finishes off with Battle Roads running from May till June. And these are the same as the Battle Roads from September to October. They bookend the season, if you will. You can get 2 championship points for winning, you get 1 play point for attending. And you can go to many of these. And they're really nice to kind of hit 1 or 2 of these up every weekend for a month or 2. Then we get to the biggies. Nationals. Now, nationals happen throughout the year, throughout the month, and often the month before. US nationals, however, runs over 3 days because it is massive. In the US this year, we had 5 Swiss rounds on the Friday, the rest of the Swiss and up to top 32 on Saturday, and top 16 through to the final on Sunday, because over 1,000 people arrived. The thing about Nats is, though, that you can get invitations. You don't have to amass a certain amount of points. If you get top 8 at US Nationals, you're into Worlds. If you get top 4, they will also pay your flight and accommodation. But that changes around the world. In the UK, for instance, the top 4 get an invite, and the top 2 get a paid invite. Play points for Nationals are irrelevant, but remember that you need 10 play points to go in. Now, championship points are awarded at Nationals. You get 20 for first, 16 for second, 12 for third and fourth, 10 for 5th to 9th, 8 for 9th to 12th, or 6 for 13th to 16th. And then it goes down a little bit further than that. Remembering, of course, that if you get 8 for above, you're in automatically, regardless of how many championship points you've got from other places. And then we get to Worlds, which this year is August the 10th to the 12th, but it does change around a little bit. But it's usually mid to early August. This year it's happening in Hawaii. Last year it happened in San Diego. Year before was Hawaii. Year before was San Diego. And I'm making a bet right now it's probably going to be in San Diego next year. But Worlds is an invitation-only affair. In order to qualify for Worlds, you can either get an automatic invite from Nationals, You can earn enough championship points. You can get an automatic invitation with paid flight and accommodation if you got top 4 at Worlds the previous year, or you can go through the grinder. Now the grinder is basically, it's known as a last chance qualifier, and it is a knockout tournament. You go to Worlds, you enter a knockout tournament, every round it's a best of 3, 45 minutes. If you win, you're through to the next round. If you lose, you're out. That is your tournament over. The last 8 people standing get into Worlds. It's harsh, it's hard, there's a lot of good players, and there are not a lot of spaces going. Last year they actually let in 16 rather than 8, but over 600 people entered. But if you go to Worlds just to join in, it's a last roll of the dice, if you will. So for most people, it's going to be championship points that are going to get you into Worlds. Only 4 people are going to get in from the previous year. Only 4 or 8 people are going to get in through nationals in each country. So really, you're going to be looking at championship points. And the question really is, are they fair? Now, I ran through the points earlier, but there's a couple of little anomalies here whereby top 16 at nationals is the same as winning a city championship.
You're kidding me, right?
Now, city championships are going to vary from city to city, but some city championships in some countries, you're going to be seeing city championships of a dozen people. Even in the US, you could see some as little as 20 or 30 people. And there is an argument here that making top 16 at nationals, where there's 1,000 people, is quite a lot harder than winning a city championship. I mean, I went to one that had 7 people last year. Managed to get in 4th, so, you know, did alright on that one. But really, there is an argument here. And cities really are the best way to go, the best way to really hoard points. Marathons especially, if you can have a good run at a marathon, you can almost secure your invite there and then. Now there is also a couple other things which I should bring to your attention. There's also the Pokemon League. Now this is where you go to League at your local shop every week. Once a week. Now you cannot win championship points from League, but you get play points. 1 play point per season. And given that there are 8 seasons in a year, that means that if you go to League every week and go to 2 battle roads or 1 stakes or 1 regionals, etc., you're going to have enough play points for nationals. Now this is a topic which I talked about right back in my first podcast, week 1, but I really do think that most people shouldn't have much problem getting up to 10 play points. The other tournaments I feel are worth a mention are the ECC and the Prague Cup. Now these happen in Europe and they are the equivalents of states or regionals, but instead of just being for one country, they are Europe-wide. The ECC happened in Arnhem, about an hour train ride out of Amsterdam in the Netherlands this year. Happened around about February time, and this attracted about 240 masters. The Prague Cup happened, I believe it was around November, in Prague, in the Czech Republic, and attracted a few less people. Now, these aren't really the kind of tournaments you're going to go to try and earn that invite, because they're very big and they're very competitive, but they are a heck of a lot of fun, and if you live in Europe, or you can get to them anyway, I would highly recommend you go along to these. So I've talked about the different ways to qualify for Worlds, and most of you are going to be going for championship points. So the question is, how many do you actually need to get into Worlds? Now the season has, apart from Worlds, ended. There is a last chance qualifier, there's Worlds itself, there are no other tournaments from which you can earn championship points. So I can now tell you definitively how many championship points you need for Worlds. In the US, you need to make top 40. And for this, in order to guarantee your invite, you need 50 points. Now, there were a couple people who got in with 49 points, but there were a couple people that didn't. So essentially, I'm saying 50 points. In Europe, the top 50 get in, and for that you needed 40 points. Again, there were a couple that got in with 39, but there are a couple that didn't. For that reason, 40 points is a cut-off. So does that mean it's harder to get in through the US than it is in Europe? And I'm going to go very clear here and say that yes, I believe it is harder to earn enough championship points in America than it is in Europe. Not only do you need to earn more points, but generally tournaments are bigger. Tournaments are more difficult in the US. Not only that, but you saw that 4 of the top 5 play pointers are from Europe, which means that generally people in Europe can get to more tournaments. Generally, the tournaments are slightly easier and have less people, and you need a smaller total to get in. So, I want it on record here, US players, I'm on your side. it is harder for you guys to get in on championship points. Now there is an interesting development whereby you can actually earn championship points at Worlds, and they count for next season. From top 32, you can earn championship points at Worlds to get you in next season. Now some people are already saying that this is unfair. Why should these people who go to Worlds have an advantage in getting into Worlds next year? Is this not going to create some kind of monopoly whereby you get into Worlds one year and that gives you this leg up where you can get into Worlds every year? And I'm going to say no. Because essentially the people who earn enough extra points from Worlds to make a difference are going to be the people that are getting top 8, top 16. You would expect these people to qualify anyway. So I think the number of championship points is going to go up, but I think it's going to go up at the top end. The people that are going to qualify anyway are going to have more points than they otherwise would through Worlds. But I think time you get down to number 50 in Europe or 40 in the US, I don't think this number is really going to change. And I would expect the cutoff to be very, very similar next year to the one it is this year. We're getting more good players around the world every season. Points are being shared out. We're not seeing people hoarding points like we saw people hoarding tournament wins in previous years. And I think points are going to keep being spread out, and I think that the cut-off really isn't going to change, and I don't think Worlds is going to be a huge difference to that. So how is the best way to qualify for Worlds? Now I think when we're looking at this, I want to ignore winning tournaments for the time being. You get 5 points for getting top 8 at States, 4 points for getting top 4 at Cities, 4 points for getting top 32 at Nats, 2 points for winning a Battle Road, 1 point for coming second. And I think this is where your points should be coming in. So to take Europe and needing 40 points, if you top cut 2 states, that'll give you 10 points. If you top cut 5 cities, that'll give you 20 points. Top 32 at Nats gives you 4 points. 3 Battle Road wins give you 6. And that takes you up to your 40 points. Now if you start winning cities and winning states, and get more than top 32 at Nationals, or win more than 3 Battle Roads, then you can play around with the numbers a little bit. But really, if you can consistently top cut states and cities, you're going to get in. Now there are best finish limits here. You can only get points from 4 states. Now these are your highest. It doesn't mean that as soon as you get points from 4 you can't do it. If you've got 4 wins at states and a top 4, your top 4 is irrelevant, it's not going to count. Similarly, 5 cities and 8 Battle Roads. Now this year, me personally, I ended up with 19 championship points. I won a Cities, I got top 4 at Cities, I got top 8 at the States, and I got top 64 at the ECC. So I was about halfway there, which was annoying, but as we'll see in a minute, I did bubble more than a couple of times. Now the championship point system has replaced the ELO system. Now this is a system similar to in chess, whereby everybody starts on a ranking of 1600. Every time in every tournament that you win a game, your ELO goes up. Every time you lose a game, it goes down. And the amount it goes up or down depends on the K value. The bigger the tournament, the bigger the K value, i.e. Nationals, big K value, Battle Roads, small K value. It also goes up or down depending on the difference in ELO between you and your opponent. If you beat someone with an ELO far greater than yours, you gain a lot of points. But if you lose to someone with an ELO far lower than yours, you lose a lot of points. Now, I didn't like the ELO system because I know people who would XO a Cities, XO a States, and you're in. You do well in 2 tournaments, you're in. Essentially, doing as well as 16 championship points, you're in. Now, I like the championship points because it means that you have to keep doing well in tournaments. You can't just do in a couple. Also, with ELO, you'd get to a certain point and you'd know that you had an invite if you stopped playing. So, for instance, Jaywitz, who was a very prominent American player last year, played 3 rounds at Nationals, ended up at 2-1 and dropped to protect his ranking. Tommy Roberts in the UK didn't play in Nationals last year because he knew he had an invite, and he actually could have lost his invite playing at Nationals. And it also means that not having ELO, you can play fun decks for some tournaments. You can play a deck knowing that if you do terribly, it's not going to matter. ELO punished you for doing badly in tournaments. Championship points rewards you for doing well. But there are some problems with championship points. It really does favour people who can get everywhere. and it's very, very easy to miscut. At Bournemouth Stakes this year, I missed top 8 by 0.5% of opponent's win percentage, actually missing out to a person I'd beaten in Swiss. Similarly at the ECC, I missed top cut by 0.5% of opponent's win percentage. And at Exeter Stakes, I missed cut on resistance again. That's at least 11 points lost just because I bubbled on resistance. Now with ELO, I would have got something there because my ELO would have gone up from doing well in that tournament. But I still prefer championship points. It also skews the importance of small events. As I've said, cities is really where you can start building up these championship points. But then again, people used to do really well in the marathons last year, and then that would pretty much give them their invite, and then they'd have to stop playing for stakes and nationals. Some argue that this means championship points means attendance is better than consistency. It's better to play in a lot of tournaments and do well in these tournaments. And this is right up to a point, but now you've got to do well in a lot of tournaments. Back in 2008, Tom Dolezal went into Nats with 1600 ELO rating. He hadn't played in a single tournament. He made top 8 at Nats, and that pushed him into the top 40 in the country from that one tournament. Now the next year, the K value, the importance if you will, of nationals was downgraded a little bit so that this couldn't be repeated. But this still shows that ELO can give some silly, silly things. Now originally, and we're going back a few years now, and this is back when I'm not playing so I'm going on what other people have told me, we had gym challenges, and the only way to get into Worlds was to do well in a gym challenge, or to do well in regionals, or to do well in Nats. Which meant that if you didn't do well in one of these big tournaments, you couldn't qualify. And that's really not a good system. So the final question I really want to ask on championship points is, how do we make this system better? Now I think we could let more than 128 people into Worlds, but we do need to really keep the prestige of Worlds going. We could have a goal line though. Say for instance 40 points and you're in. You reach 40 championship points, you're into Worlds. This does risk pushing up the attendance of Worlds, but it also means that you're not going to get, say, people in America earning 45 championship points and still missing out on an invite. But do we want to let more people into Worlds? Now I'm going to finish here with a little note about Tommy Roberts. He is, according to championship points, the best player in the world. He's got 82, which is 5 more than the person who got second. He's also the 5th best play pointer, in that he has 100 play points, the 5th best in the world at this point. Now I can tell you that he went to a lot of countries. He didn't just gain his points in England, he also went to tournaments in Germany, Belgium and the Netherlands. However, he also won 4 states. He literally went to Bournemouth Stakes knowing that even if he won, he couldn't get any more points. The first 3 stakes that he played in the UK, he won all of them, taking maximum points. So yes, he played in a lot of tournaments, yes, he got a lot of play points, but he also won a heck of a lot of tournaments, and I don't think that should be overlooked. Hopefully that's answered a lot of the questions you had about play points, championship points, nationals, worlds, etc. If there's anything else, remember to find me on Twitter at @TheWassy or email me at ptcgradio@hotmail.co.uk. There's only one forum topic that's really grabbed my attention this week, and that is that people are complaining about the prizes at nationals. There was one person, he managed to get top 32 at US nationals. He walked away with 18 packs of cards. Now this is roughly a $50 value in the US or a £40 value in the UK. Now I think going away with $50 worth of stuff for a free tournament isn't bad going. Now you're not going to make a profit at nationals. 4 people out of 1,000 get a paid trip to Hawaii. If my maths holds up, that's roughly 0.4% of people. So you shouldn't go to nationals expecting to make a profit. You've got to pay your gas or your petrol, you've got to pay your accommodation. You're not going to make money from this unless you live around the corner. Now some people have said that nationals is harder than Worlds, and this is true up to a point. There are more people at nationals, you have to win more rounds. But if you win regionals, then you get 2 buys. It means that some people go into nationals knowing that going for free, with the good resistance you get from having those buys, is going to get you into cut. Not only that, but at Worlds, everyone there has qualified either through championship points, going undefeated through the grinder, getting top 4 at Worlds the previous year, or doing really well at nationals. At Nationals, you're going to get people who have played in a few tournaments. There are going to be some easy matchups at Nationals. Also at Worlds, if you take the tournament as a whole, then maybe, just maybe, Nationals is actually a little bit more difficult than Worlds. If you take into account that you've had to qualify for Worlds, and then the tournament comes in, I do not buy that Nationals is easier than Worlds. If you include the qualification, which you really have to, because you can't play it in the Worlds if you don't qualify, then Worlds, I think, is a lot harder. Plus, Worlds has the prestige. So this argument of why a Worlds prize is so much better than Nationals prizes, it's the yearly showpiece, and you have to qualify, and it's for the best players in the world. Now, one thing that's been mooted around is, why don't we charge $10 for entry? 1,000 people, $10 for entry. Even if we just charge the Masters, that is $10,000 going in the prize pot. But that takes away from it being a free tournament, and Nintendo and Pokemon clearly want it to be a free tournament. So yes, it would be good, but I don't think it would work because it would take away from being a free tournament. The one thing which I think is workable is you could give promo cards. If you get top 32 at Worlds, you get a top 32 card. Why not have that for Nationals? You get first, second and third place Victory Cup at Battle Rose nowadays. This, I think, would solve the problem in that it wouldn't cost a lot of money, but it would give the prestige, and it would give something tangible. Personally, if I got top 32 at Nats, I think that alone would be enough, and I think a lot of people would agree with me there. You could argue that people who got top 32 and are saying, I only got $50 worth of cards, it's a bit throwing toys out the pram. I'm not saying that's my opinion, I'm just saying it's something that could be argued. Personally, I think the prizes are pretty darn good, and I think if you're not paying for tournaments, and it's for fun anyway, I think $50 worth of cards, pretty darn good. Now, I have had an email from Matt on my PTCG Radio email. I asked people for their most memorable games, and he's got one which he sent to me, which I'd like to share with you. It is a game from this season. He was playing Eels with Terrakion against Turbo Darkrai with a Tornadus tech. And this Darkrai deck went off very fast, managed to get 3 fully fledged Darkrai in the first few turns. Matt had 5 significant Pokemon prized. The Darkrai player took the first 3 prizes, and being 3 prizes down, Matt looked at his board, he had only a Dynamo out and no cards in his hand. Quite frankly, this is looking like a no-win situation. But he managed to top deck a Juniper and set up an Eel, a Terrakion, a Fighting Energy, the Dynamotor, and he actually managed to get a Terrakion KO to get 2 prizes back. So the Darkrai player brings out his Tornadus, he plays a few things around, he KOs that Terrakion with his Tornadus, leaving Matt having to drop an N, putting the Darkrai player on 2 cards and Matt on 4. From his 4 cards he draws a DCE, Fighting, Revive and Catcher, everything he needs to get a second Darkrai KO with Terrakion. The Darkrai player, undeterred, gets a Dark Claw, he gets a plus power, he manages to KO that Terrakion, leaving a Dynamo with 10 damage and an Eel with 30 damage, and that is all Matt's got out. At which point, he's just got a Super Rod, he top decks an N. He has to end for 2 cards. So he plays a Super Rod, plays the N, his 2 cards, Fighting Energy and Terrakion to get a third Darkrai KO with Terrakion, and win a game which, quite frankly, looked incredibly unlikely. And this just goes to show 2 things. Firstly, never give up. And secondly, Terrakion really can be good against Darkrai. It does lead to the question though, this Darkrai player, where were his Eviolites? And that's about all we've got time for this week on PTCG Radio. Remember, if you've got any feedback, if you've got a most memorable game that you would like to share with me, if you've got any questions, anything you'd like me to address, please email me at ptcgradio@hotmail.co.uk. Or if you'd prefer Twitter, find me at TheWassy. Now, I am, hopefully, in the next week, going to set up a Google phone account. Not exactly sure what that is, but I'm hoping this will enable you to phone me and leave me voice messages about your most memorable game and anything else you'd like to contribute with. I'd like to once again thank everyone that's been helping me to promote this podcast, whether this is my friends on Facebook, people on 6 Prizes, especially Adam Capriola, or Pokemon Dan, who's been helping me get this up on YouTube. It is all greatly appreciated. Don't forget to check back next Wednesday for another episode, where I'm hoping I'll finally be able to talk about Entei or Klinklang, and whether Random Receiver is still going to see play next year. Having said that, pre-releases to Dragons Exalted are coming up, so if the cards get leaked early, It's going to change things around again. Thank you very much for listening. I've been Ross Gilbert, and you've been listening to PTCG Radio. And just as we're about to finish, we have some actual genuine breaking news. I was just finishing up the podcast, I was exporting it, ready to give it a final listen to, and then uploading it to the worldwide interweb, when I checked Facebook and found there is some genuine breaking news. And that is, Autumn Battle Roads will have no top cut. Now previously, if I remember correctly, they were capped at a top 4. Now you're going to have Swiss, and the standings after Swiss are going to be the final standings. Now sometimes this won't be so much of a problem. I remember a very small 15-person 4-round battle road that I went to just a couple of months ago. And what happened, as always happens in a very small battle road, was that there was 2 people who were XO, myself and a man called Charles Barton, and we played off in the 4th round, which was essentially the final. He won and got 2 championship points, I lost and got 1. And that was it. That was the end of the tournament. It made perfect sense. Because what would have happened had there been a top 2 is that we would have replayed, he'd have won anyway, and it would have been an hour wasted. Although we would have had a fun best of 3 out of it. The problem is that sometimes you get bigger tournaments, and you get people who are deserving of making top cut, maybe 4 of them, and you get into a top 4. And in that situation, you're getting 2 people who get championship points, 2 people who don't, and it's all depending on resistance, the luck of the draw of who you've played throughout the day. And I think in this situation, this is actually pretty bad. Tournaments that are big enough to have a top 4, having a top 4 is good. Eliminating this means that you're going to get a lot of people who go X1 and make points, and a lot of people who go X1 and miss points purely on resistance, on the luck of the draw. So this is your breaking news. I hadn't heard it until about 5 minutes ago, and I'm hoping that this will be some nice breaking news for some of you. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you for that, Ross. It was both informative and stimulating.